Okay, this is take number, I want to say like five or six. Welcome to the first podcast, Beyond the Surface with Madi Jenkins. I will be completely honest, just starting this out and say I recorded a whole episode yesterday and I went back and I listened to it. I had my husband listen to it and I didn't like it. So I'm re recording it. And I'm also going to call myself out and say, I cannot get this technical or this nitpicky because the whole point of this podcast, it being called Beyond the Surface, is to be raw and transparent. But for this first podcast, instead of kind of deep diving on who I am, who Madi Jenkins is, I want to talk more about what my goal is behind this podcast. I want to be able to lay out and have people, those listeners that are listening, understand my sole purpose behind this podcast. Because I think the beauty behind it is going to be we're going to learn more about each other. You're going to learn more about me as, podcast gets recorded, podcast gets posted. I will have not hosts, but I will have guests on here. It's not going to be your normal like specialist or those people that are professionals in certain fields of work. Now, don't get me wrong, I will reach out to some and have some on here, but I really want to get guests on here that are just real life normal, not saying that not everybody's normal, but just your real life guests and hear different perspectives, different opinions. The whole purpose behind this podcast, it's called Beyond the Surface, is this has been the whole purpose behind it. Let me just say that and start out with that is to deep dive and talk about and normalize things that we may be thinking, or we may think that we are the only people that think, have these thoughts, have these struggles, have these mind games, and to talk about it and to bring it out into the open and be transparent and be raw, go beyond the surface level of what you see on social media. Let me deep dive that more. I will be completely transparent and say that I go down the rabbit hole in social media all the time. We're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of it. And I finally have gotten to the point where I started having these discussions with a lot of our members. I'm a gym owner, 24-hour gym owner in Kansas. And it's been discussed more and more, and we're finding out more and more the more open that we're being and talking to each other about some of the thoughts that you may be having. Someone else is having those exact same thoughts, either about themselves, about something else, whatever that may be. And I think with social media, we're normalizing this picture perfect life, and that is not real life. Hate to break it to you. Or if you are somebody that feels like you have a perfect life, you don't. Like nobody's life is perfect, but because of social media, a lot of the imperfections and beauty behind what is life gets hidden because all we want to post is what we think looks good or what we think makes us seem perfect, or I'm going to hide behind this screen. So the goal behind this podcast is to go beyond that and to bring back just real life stuff. I almost said SHIT, but I'm not going to. It would be better about cursing. But honestly, real life shit. Just talk about it and own up to maybe what our weaknesses are, what we're battling. That's kind of the goal. Just have a conversation, just to talk, real honest, be open and be willing to listen to each other about our thoughts. So that's kind of the goal behind this podcast. Now, am I going to be catered more towards women? I mean, I'll have a lot more women guests just because that's kind of our main population in the gym that I own is a lot of women. And because, I would like to say that I speak about not the struggles that women have, but the empowerment that is found behind women in strength, not just physically, but mentally, learning to be more confident in who you are as a woman. Granted, I am a woman, so I guess that's why I have a little bit more of passion and fire behind that. But we're gonna get guests out of all the different woodworks, but that's kind of my goal. to go a little bit and give you just a little snippet on who I am, I'm Madi Jenkins. I go by Madi, Coach Madi, Mom Madi, whatever you want to call me. I wear a lot of hats. I'm 26 years old, born and raised in Derby, Kansas. I have not left this town. Neither has my husband. My husband and I are both from Derby and born and raised. I mean, he's left town for college. He went to college for baseball. But I own, like I just said, a 24-hour strength training gym and personal training gym. I'm a personal trainer. I'm a powerlifting coach. I am one of the powerlifting coaches for our high school here. Uh, I teach strength training classes. I'm a mom. We have a son. And I've been married to my husband for 4 years. We've been together for 6. He is my best friend. My favorite color is purple. I'm just going to give you just some random facts, but our gym's name is G&G Training. It stands for Grit and Grace. And the whole purpose behind what the name was, I was a teacher before I became a gym owner. And it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to name the business. And because for a long time, I was MJ Training, because that's my initials, MJ Training. But then I realized I wanted to have a little bit more meaning behind the name. So for some reason, grace has always been something I talk about with my women, with my female team, with my female members, my female clients, is giving ourselves grace. Because again, not to bring up social media, but we are constantly seeing the perfect picture with everybody, and self-comparison is a thief in our progression and being able to acknowledge our self wins. And we are constantly seeing other people out there, maybe other moms, maybe your mom, and you see another mom out there and she's able to get an hour workout in a day and eat a certain way and sleep a certain amount of hours, and you're struggling with that, and you start to compare yourself to that person, and then you start to feel like your schedule is constantly hectic. And so this is where I'm constantly talking about giving ourselves grace, because there's a lot of unexpected when it comes to life. You truly don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen tonight. And it's important to be able to adapt, but also accept, do the best that you can at that point in time. Give yourself grace. Acknowledge that you are still trying, as long as you don't throw up your hands and you're like, I give up. I'm not doing this. Something got in the way, so I'm just not going to do it. That's not how you give yourself grace. It is something I've been kind of going on about with my team. I have a all female powerlifting team that I coach. I've been asking them, you are not going to be 100%. You're not going to feel 100% every single day. You're going to have a day where you wake up and you feel more about 70%, 65%. Not just because of hormones, even though that is a big factor, but just because you're not, maybe you didn't get the best sleep. How did you go about still trying to give your 100% for that day, even if it looks more like your 70%? It's not going to be your 100%, but you still showed up and you tried. Now, here's the boundary behind giving yourself grace and making excuses. If you're constantly feeling like I'm doing air quotes right now, tired every single day, and you're using that as an excuse, then that's not giving yourself grace. That is lack of discipline. So again, it's hard to be able to find that fine line of giving yourself grace, but that's why grace is in the word, our business name, and then grit. And that kind of, I think, piggybacks off of having that discipline, because you're going to have to work hard. Things are not going to be given to you. You're going to set those goals. And in order to achieve those goals, guess what? You're not going to be able to go to sleep, wake up, boom, goal achieved. That's not how it works. So you're going to have grit. You're going to be thrown obstacles. Things are going to get thrown your way that, again, the unexpected. Are you willing to push through that? Are you willing to overcome that? What steps are you willing to take? Are you willing to be patient? Are you willing to trust in the process? You guys have heard that phrase so many times because it's all around social media, but it's true. Like it sounds so cookie cutter and it sounds so cheesy. Every single time I say like, trust the process, I automatically will go to like those cheesy Instagram posts or Facebook posts that you see. You must trust the process, but it's so true. And I have so many women that I've worked with that are a prime example of trusting the process because they've been either with me or they've been doing their program or staying consistent for a year, over a year, and they're just now seeing dramatic changes, dramatic progress. But it's because they did not give up. They had grit. They were thrown obstacles. They were thrown whatever is in Mario Kart, the little mushrooms that get thrown your way and will make your cart explode. But they continue to push forward and find that consistency and be consistent. So that's kind of why I was like, you got to have a little bit of grit, but you also have to learn to give yourself grace because guess what? Life happens. You do not have control over this timeline that you think you do. And that's why we're called G&G, called G&G Training. So that is the gym that I own. And I think that's kind of just the sole goal that I have behind this podcast. If you know me, you know I am chaotic. My mind runs a million miles an hour. So I have a goal for myself is to be a little bit more organized and have more, not purpose, but be more intentional with each podcast, not rush through it, not have more of a baseline, kind of have like a template that I'm going to follow, but also be willing to open up and go off that template. But I have a horrible, I'm not good at slowing down. So by starting this podcast, that's a goal that I have set for myself. I'm really excited to get this going. I'm really nervous. The reason that we're finally starting this, because again, if you are aware, you know who I am. I've always talked about starting a podcast, but I never have. I'm a Christian, so I have a relationship with the man upstairs. I love Jesus, and I've learned to release that control that a lot of people feel like they have to have on their lives, and have learned to trust him and follow his signs and listen to him when he does speak to me. And that's one of the reasons why I am where I am today. But I've always like had that thought and that urge to start a podcast and to do that and to get that going. But there was always that voice. There was always that like gut feeling that it's not time. Like it's not time yet. Be patient. It's not time. And this was clear back in 2020 when I started having these thoughts and these motives and this goal. Like I've always everybody's New Year's coming up, and you set those goals that you want to achieve by the end of the year. A podcast was always, for the past 4 years, has been on that goal for me. But I've never, not saying achieved it, but it hadn't been my time yet. And for some reason, it's been weighing heavy on me. I've taken a step back from competing in powerlifting. My why has changed. My passion, my fire is being fueled by other things now. And for some reason, it's been weighing heavy. And I ended up having a conversation with a friend, and he showed up with a mic because honestly all I really needed to do was just buy a mic, and that was the one step that was the excuse I was giving myself is, well, I don't have a mic so I can't record an episode. Well, thank you, Gage, because he shows up with a mic, and I automatically in my head was like, all right, Maddie, you can't make excuses anymore. Like this is it. This is time. This is a sign for you to take the leap and to stop allowing not fear, but obviously there was someone else was telling me that I needed to wait. But here we are. We're started and we're getting it going. And I have no idea what the outcome is going to be, but I hope that those that are listening will, whether it's one episode that you find relatable or maybe multiple episodes, or maybe you find a piece in every single episode where you're like, I relate to this, or these are thoughts that I have, or you just kind of get that feeling that you're not alone in some things. That's what I hope for listeners to get out of this podcast is a little bit of, community. Join the community, even if you're just a listener. You don't have to be a part of the gym. I hope to reach out to those outside of the state, good old Kansas. But if you are listening, I appreciate it more than you know. here's to the first recording and strap in because this is going to be a wild ride. Here we go.